Hello, manifold maltsters. Sorry, manifolded maltsters. Better get it right. It is, after all, a malt mention. And thank you to Rory121 for the malt mention moment. I can tick this off the malt mention list. Welcome, whisky fans, to Ralphie Review 1052 Extras, in which I give extra conversation, content, perspective, opinion, and the occasional rant about whisky, over and above the individual bottles that I actually review. And in this particular video, I'm going to talk about forensics. I'm going to talk about the ultimate goal of the whisky drinker is to get the absolute most whilst looking after one's health, while maintaining one's quality of life, while keeping a healthy perspective of things, is being in a position to pour a glass of alcoholic beverage, whether it be whisky or rum or cognac or bourbon or whatever, and actually take the time to nose it, taste it, and really enjoy the fullness of the experience. And I say this because, unfortunately, I notice many whisky drinkers can be in too much of a hurry. And particularly at whisky festivals, people are simply drinking too much, despite the fact that they've primed themselves by eating plenty beforehand of pies and chips and loads of carbohydrates, to really sort of condition the stomach, because you never go to a whisky festival on an empty stomach, because it just accelerates your intoxication. People have the ground skills to slow down the approach of intoxication. But when you're going from table to table at a whisky festival, or you're in a whisky club and they've got what's called an open barrel, in other words, the bottles are just open, sitting in the barrel, help yourself, it is so tempting to start off moderately, but then as the alcohol kicks in a little bit, we start to speed things up. I've been there myself, but I quickly moved on from it, because despite taking notes, there comes a point when you're going through a whisky too quickly. You're no longer enjoying it, because you're not giving the mind time to assimilate the experience and store the experience in the form of fond memories. This is why when we think about the whiskies we've really enjoyed, they tend to be certain bottles at certain times that celebrate certain occasions and certain events in our lives. And the thing is, we never necked or guzzled that bottle. We had it slowly. We shared the time with it. And the intoxication of the alcohol was a very low priority. It was significantly deprioritized in favour of the fullness of the experience, which of course would involve some mild inebriation, because that has its own psychological and neurological effects. It actually helps our memory banks. But there comes a time with whisky where, when we slow things down significantly, we find that we can have a same glass of whisky for several hours, or several glasses of whisky, so a little flight of whisky, and we reach the end of it, and there's still whisky in the glass. We've not quite finished them. Now, at this point, we could decide to neck it before we head to bed, or alternatively, we can decide to just stick a lid on it and come back and resume the experience exclusively through our nose the following morning, saying, how has this whisky weathered the oxidization overnight? And it's amazing how much you can learn from that, particularly on cask finished whiskies, because you'll find more often than not that the original whisky is still sitting in the glass, minus the cask finish, which has not bonded fully, and therefore it's floated off It's oxidised off and out into the air. When we are involved in our forensics, leading to those precious moments, it's good to have an activity list, knowing which whiskies we've personally enjoyed, understanding why we've enjoyed them, and looking at the growing situation, which you'll probably encounter if you haven't already, where you're looking for alcoholically higher strength bottlings, bottled completely unchill filtered and at natural colour, simply because you're getting to far closer to the authenticity of the whisky which was actually maturing in the casks and warehouses. It is extremely rare that whisky is diluted down to bottling strength in casks and then stored for a couple of weeks or even a month in a warehouse, although it has been known. It's extremely unusual because it doesn't make economic sense. It's far more sensible for distilleries to cask as high a strength as possible and then dilute down according to their wants, needs and branding at the time of bottling. Now, a word of caution: don't be fooled into assuming that every time you see a higher strength bottling, naturally delivered, independent bottling style, it's going to be better. All it means is that whatever the condition of the cask, whatever the state of the whisky in the cask over time, that it will be delivered more honestly and less inhibited. In other words, if you've got a bad malt in a bad cask, and it's usually a decent malt going into a bad cask, and that bad cask has had too much of its own way, it doesn't matter how honestly it's been presented at cask strength, unchill filtered, natural colour, you're going to get a really bad result. And you will occasionally find them amongst the independent bottlers who can, and I'm just calling them out for it, occasionally they'll just bottle and be done with it. Bottle and let the fates take their course. If it doesn't sell tomorrow, it'll sell next year or the year after. Doesn't matter the quality. Eventually it will sell. And unfortunately, that attitude still exists within some independent bottlers. I have encountered it in bottlings I've bought in the past. So we have to do forensics. We have to go, and it's the internet that will help you, not books, not experts, not the industry. No. Don't waste your time. You're doing this online. You're cross-referencing. You're getting your sequence. You're getting your master plan into place to show you as quickly as possible how good is that whisky I'm about to buy and spend money on. Ideally, once you've done your forensics, you go to a specialist whisky shop where you may pay a bit more for the bottling, but if you've got a good rapport with the vendor, with the seller, with the member of staff, that is worth its weight in gold. They're not going to recommend a bad one to you, because if they do, you'll go straight back with the open bottle, get them to taste it and ask them, why did you recommend this to me? It's happening now. It's happening in American retailers. That's all I have to say on the subject. Short, sweet and to the point. See you soon, Maltmates.